Um, cool. We do try to record these posts for later. I'm mostly going to be shepherding people through the presentation today, which really is just sort of a reformat of what's on the website. But I've looked at the website 10,000 times, and that's all super crystal clear to me, but it might not be to other people. So we use this AMA as another way to present the information and try to get people, to express any questions or concerns they have. And then just address any of those issues. So I've got a little PowerPoint that I'll be walking people through. It's really straightforward. We'll have some time for question and answer at the end. We'll remind people to check out the Discord channel. There's going to be a lot more discussions that are going on there, and that'll be the avenue for discussion going forward. I'm super excited for the folks that joined today and for everyone that signed up for this. This is my sort of first time working on this side of a hackathon, and I didn't know what to expect. But we have nearly 400 people signed up so far, which is absolutely amazing. So very, very excited for that. Thank you, Adarsh, for posting the Discord link there in the chat. I definitely recommend you guys check that out. We'll use that in a couple of ways. We'll use that as an opportunity for people to collaborate with each other. We'll use that as an opportunity for people to ask questions of each other or of judges. I'll be serving as one of the judges here. But I want people to come to a solution. It's in my best interest if people come to a solution. So I'm perfectly happy to help people get unstuck. I really want this to be a good experience for everyone and a learning experience for everyone. I want everyone to be able to come to a working solution. So we'll be here to help, and Discord is one of the tools we'll be using to help people. And it could be just a question, it could be a strategy, it could be a technical problem, it could be anything. So I definitely encourage people to check that out. All right. I don't know if it's Rico or Adarsh, but if one of you could permit me the ability to share my screen, I can walk through the presentation that I have.
Yeah, Sean, you should have access now.
Indeed, I do. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to quickly play this. Let's see if this plays. This is a little message from our founders here. Can you guys hear that?
No.
We can.
Do I have to do something special sharing?
I think there should be an option for audio when you start sharing your screen.
Yep, there is. I got it.
Hi, my name is Justin Finlay.
And I'm Jack Danahy.
Today we're here to introduce the Cybersecurity Polyglot project, which is a hackathon sponsored by Almana Cyber and New Harbor Security. The Polyglot
Polyglot is trying to solve a very important problem in cybersecurity. As some of you may know, cybersecurity is really complicated. But if you're not a cybersecurity person, don't let that bother you, because this is a problem that's been solved lots of different times in lots of different industries. The complexity comes because different tools speak different languages, and the polyglot is going to be one language that unifies them all.
So for those interested in participating in the hackathon, enrollment is currently open, and you are encouraged to apply. To find all of the information, dates, timelines, any upcoming notifications, you can stay up to date on the Almana Polyglot Hackathon website.
If you've got any experience in natural language processing, or if you've got a real fascination in AI, or you want to learn more about cybersecurity, this is a great place to start, and you can solve a problem that's been plaguing your industry for a long time. Welcome to the Polyglot Project.
So that's just a little intro there from some of the founders and key players in New Harbor Security. Those two folks that you heard from, Jack and Justin, are also managing partners at Almana Cyber. So New Harbor is a cybersecurity firm, and Almana is a cybersecurity-focused venture capital firm. And together they are sponsoring this hackathon. They also sponsor an incubator program for startups in the cybersecurity space, people that have really good ideas and are looking to get a business off the ground. And as part of spinning up that incubator program, we thought that seeding it with this hackathon would be a really cool idea. So we took a problem in the cybersecurity space, one that we think has significant market potential, one that, as Jack was saying, has plagued the industry for a while, the problem. And then we threw that out there to sort of be the first entrant through this, more or less through this incubator program. So we're all super excited about that. One of the things that Justin mentioned is on the side here, and that's the timeline. We are in the idea submission phase now. So this is the phase where people are registering, and registering is super, super simple. But by the end of this phase, the other thing that's important that people do is go through submitting some details about their idea. And I'll share in a little bit what those ideas are. And the point of this is, we do have 400 participants already, which we're super excited about. But before people get access to the data, before people really get started in the project, we want to make sure that people get started on the right foot. So we do have some criteria around what is required to submit a project. So we'll go through that in a minute. Come on.
Hi, my name is Justin Finblade.
And I'm Jack Danahy.
Hold on here. PowerPoint's being finicky with me. Oh, sorry about that. All kinds of technical problems today. You guys can see this?
Yes.
Okay. The best way to predict the future is create it. And I like that message. And I like the quote on the first page, which many of you have probably seen. It's the famous man in the arena quote from Teddy Roosevelt. I think what we're doing here is pretty cool. And I really appreciate that people are willing to kind of jump in. We've provided some information on exactly what the problem is. And we provided opportunities for you to hear about how we see the problem. We'll provide some sample ideas about how we might tackle the problem. But at the same point, there's a lot of uncertainty here. We're not exactly sure how this is going to work. We're not exactly sure how long it's going to take to complete. But nonetheless, everyone was willing to jump in. And I really appreciate that. And I'm really excited about that. Do we need to upload a deck? Yeah, so we don't, I'll address that. Okay, I don't know why my slides are not advancing. Okay, so I'd like to start off with this because this is super cool. Besides the fact that I do think this is going to be a fun project to work on, when I first heard about it, that was my first reaction to it. And I never know if I'm just, being a little bit of a engineering geek or AI geek. And this is part of what's so exciting for me to see so many people sign up. It's not just me being an AI geek, but besides, learning something and having a fun experience, there's a real prize at the end of this. There is $10,000 up for the winner, I'm sorry. And there is up to 5 notable entry prizes of $1,000 each. And we just sort of released $1,500 prizes for best idea submissions to encourage people to work on that. I should have mentioned too, so we're in this idea submission phase now. Following that, I know it says final submissions or the coding phase starts on February 16th. It's likely going to start a little later than that because we have so many applicants. We're likely to get a lot of submissions, and we want to give each of those their due diligence and really take the time to go through those. Not everyone that submits an idea is going to go through to the final coding stage. We don't know how many are going to go through to that final stage yet. It'll depend on the number of quality submissions we get. We don't have a hard upper number or a hard lower number. We just want to make sure everyone that gets to that final coding stage has a really good idea that we think can be successful. Okay, so this was talked about a little bit in the intro by Jack and Justin. And this sort of boils down to what are we doing here, right? So the industry itself is quite complicated. There's a lot of devices in that are providing security services that are spewing information at people all the time. There are different endpoint providers, there are firewalls, and all of these speak their own language. And the other complicating factor here that makes this a really unique challenge and a challenge that has a chance to be really genuinely transformational is that cybersecurity as an industry has never had enough employees. There's been negative unemployment since cybersecurity was a thing. I think the latest numbers for 2023 I saw were something like 500,000 jobs for 100,000 applicants. So if you imagine all of these devices that are just spewing alerts at people, also imagine there are not enough people to manage those alerts. And then imagine that that's further complicated and further exacerbated by the fact that Microsoft Defender, as one example, spews alerts in a certain format with a certain language, and CrowdStrike spews mostly the same alerts in a similar but different language. So it just makes that volume more difficult for the limited number of people who can work on it. So as what was alluded to in the beginning, in the intro, and what's alluded to on the website, is we're looking to take those two as a first step, CrowdStrike and Microsoft Defender, and create a common language or a common ontology so that limited number of cybersecurity analysts can have a fighting chance to sift through all of these alerts. Okay, so we do envision this as a natural language processing problem, but it doesn't have to be solved that way. There are probably other ways to solve this problem. And the diagram that you see there is just the visual of that fire hose that I tried to explain before at the top portion. And at the bottom portion, it's talking about where we fit in during the project. So a couple of quick notes here. You're free to use open source tools. Just give them proper attribution. Ideally, they should be free open source tools. If you're not sure, you're certainly free to ask us at any point about what tools can and cannot be incorporated. So to put a little bit more of a finer point on it, what we are building here in the hackathon is the AI NLP, if you choose that route, model. It is the software that's doing the translation and creating a common language or a common ontology for Microsoft Defender for endpoint and for CrowdStrike Falcon. What we're not building is any of the engineering stuff that shows up on either side. We're going to give you some data that represents all of those boxes at the top portion of the diagram. You do not have to figure out how to ingest data in a stream or real time from these sources. You don't have to figure out how to display the data on the other end. We're going to give you the data in a file. You have to work out how to make that model work. And then you don't have to worry about anything after that. The other note about what we're not building, we don't expect this to be a production-worthy solution that I could take on the very next day after the hackathon ends and put it into a production environment and say, this is good to go. We expect, we hope, we want this to represent a really solid proof of concept for this idea that we have here. And what we're going to do after that is we're going to take it to that next level. We're going to make any tweaks with the model that we need to make or additional configurations to make it more accurate. And, certainly at some point down the road, we're going to look to add more endpoint providers, and we're going to look to add more different types of security devices. A firewall might be the most obvious. Okay, moving on. So I mentioned the idea submission. And again, the point of this is before folks see data, before folks commit to any code, we want to make sure they're on the right page, on the right path. what we're expecting here is not something that's very significant. We do not need an elaborate PowerPoint presentation. We don't need an elaborate pitch deck. It's not a pitch that you're going to be making to get venture capital money. What we want to know is how you plan to solve this problem. How would you imagine, knowing what you know, that it could be made, your solution could be made extensible in the future. A little bit of model or diagram describing the components of your solution, how they fit together, how they work together, what is their relationship, and then the strengths and weaknesses of your approach. What it takes to maintain it, and again, what it takes to extend it over time. So this could be a couple of diagrams, it could be a YouTube video, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, it could be a few paragraphs written in Word. We're not going to be judging people on the aesthetics or the UI, if you will, of their presentation. It's really about the quality of their approach and the thoughtfulness that they've put into that approach. Final submission, I hope, is not much more laborious. Just some details on, hey, what did you do? How did it work? What does your diagram look like now? Did that change a little bit? If you have repos that are sitting out there on GitHub, we'd be looking for invites to those. Take 3 to 5 minutes, go through this in a little presentation, and then share what your test results are. How accurate is your model? At the end of the day, this is really what this is all about. That's the rubric there. I hope that's pretty straightforward. Lion's share of it is about accuracy and extensibility. We will make this PowerPoint available for folks as well, so you'll be able to have a chance to see this. And I think I mentioned a lot of this information, if not all of it, is already out there on the hackathon website, which Darsh also shared. All right, and then the obligatory sci-fi quote at the inspirational sci-fi quote there at the end. But between that and the Teddy Roosevelt quote, this really does exemplify how I think about this. I really do think this is going to be a fun exercise. I think it's a cool little intellectual challenge. Certainly AI in the past few months here has gotten a lot of attention in the press. And I think it's cool to be part of this transformational moment. So we're really excited about this. All right, so that sort of concludes the end of my piece. I'm happy to stop the share here and answer any questions that folks might have. I can't necessarily see everyone's hand, so Adarsh, if you call on folks.
Sure. I mean, if you put your hands up, we'll unmute you and you can have your questions answered.
And I know there's a question in chat earlier about the idea submission. Did that question get adequately answered?
Yes, I've sent them
Okay.
the answer from our site itself, with the requirements. But if you do have any other questions, there was no name mentioned on the question. So if you do have any questions, you can unmute or raise your hands and we can answer those for you.
And if there are none, that's okay too. You are certainly free to ask away in the one more plug for the Discord channel. You're free to ask away there. And again, this is a quote unquote competition. There is a prize for this, but we're also all here to make this work. We really do want everyone to have a working solution at the end, and we want everyone to have a solution they can be proud of. So people are here to help. I am here to help. So don't be afraid to ask any question out there on Discord at any time.
There's one question.
Oh yeah.
What are the example tools that we can't use or can use?
So that's a big question, right? And there's a zillion tools out there in the AI and NLP space. I think in general, I would think of it this way. You're free to use any standard tools that are free and readily available. I would ask that you, in your idea submission and your final submission, that you just note them. So give them proper attribution, give them, their proper credit, and use the latest stable version of those tools. There might be scenarios where we are okay with a paid tool being incorporated, but I would check first on those. And if there's any question about whether something is allowed or not, you can feel free to ask that too. But any of the common AI Python based tools are totally fine. Whether that's Spark or whether that's Keras or whether it's Scikit or NLTK or any of those kind of standard Python AI libraries are perfectly fine to use. We're not going to be terribly rigid on that. Definitely check if it's paid, if there's a price for the tool. But any common open source things will totally be permissible.
Okay, there's another one. Will data logs be monolingual English or monolingual mix, like English plus French technical logs?
It'll all be English. That's the first time we get that question. That's a good question.
And what would some data set look like?
That's the $1 million question, right? And there's a couple of things that I can say about that. If you were to look at CrowdStrike documentation, is very difficult to find unless you're a CrowdStrike subscriber, which we are. But Microsoft Defender for Endpoint does publish a great deal of documentation on what their alert notifications look like. You could find that, I think, quite easily with a couple of minutes on Google. Microsoft for Defender alert notifications. They come in plain text, they come in English, they come with a few pieces of metadata that are things like the IP address of the machine, maybe the current process that was running, maybe the host name of the machine. And then they'll have something like, all in English, a description of the alert that's maybe a sentence. And then they'll have a longer description of the alert that's maybe 3 or 4 sentences. So we are working on getting that scrubbed now. The data that we have internally that we use as users of both Defender for Endpoint and CrowdStrike Falcon all has a bunch of PII in it. We don't want to, obviously we take cybersecurity seriously and data privacy seriously, so we don't want to expose anyone's IP address, email address, name, etc. So we're going to be sharing some more on that. The data will be released, at the time of coding. But for a really, really good example, I would say Google Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, alert notifications. It's actually a pretty simple data structure. Mostly looks like key value pairs. What other questions?
That's all we have as of now. So any other questions? We have like 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go. So yeah, there is another one that has come up. What output will you be looking as classification class or some text alert?
So, again, like we are just looking to have a working model that can do this comment embedding. So, how the output of the model ultimately gets consumed in a real scenario is beyond the scope of this exercise. So for now, the output really is what's on that final submission stuff. So I want to know that you can take test data and training data and run it through your model And then I can get out of that the accuracy of the model itself. You don't have to produce an output that's going to be consumed by anything at this time. That's some engineering work for later on. Did that answer that question? We are interested in what your classifications are, of course. I think a lot of the technical details should come through with the elements that are in that final presentation. You don't have to worry about any UI or UX or anything like that. Just straight up, here's my model, here's how it performed, here's how it works. Any other questions I can answer for folks?
We don't see any open question as of now. So if you guys have any further question, you can drop them in the Q&A section, or you can, all right, we do have one now. For idea submission, are we mainly trying to embed the notification texts?
So, whoever asked that question, I want to make sure that I understand that. I want to make sure I understand what you're asking there. So the idea, so what we're trying to do, right, is we're trying to build a model that takes in the training that, assuming it's an NLP solution, that takes in the training and test data we have and then produces this common embedding. So for so with that in mind, for idea submission, what we're looking for is a description of how you would do that, how you see, you don't have to have anything actually working for the idea submission. The idea submission is really just kind of a summary of how you would solve that problem. Did that answer your question? Yes, that's correct. And again, like, so that's how I see it, right? I often make the joke that this is like the O.J. Simpson "If I Did It" book. This is, if I were to do it, this is how I would do it. But there's no, we're not prescribing a way to do this. So if folks have a different approach, that's totally fine. But the spirit of your question is yes. Yes, the answer to that is if you wanted to use some open AI for this. And again, I'm not prescribing a solution. And I'm not giving, I put out there an idea about how I would do it. I hope people have better ideas than me. So I'm not giving any preferential treatment to anyone that happens to follow the path that I put out there. But that being said, I do think the idea of using some pre-trained corpus like you'd find in OpenAI or that you'd find in BERT is one really valid way to do this. And it's one way that sort of immediately comes to mind. So no, you do not have to do it that way. And yes, you can do that. We get a lot of really good questions this time. Anything else from folks? That's a good question too. Once the texts are embedded, would you want to see a summarized result that tells about what the text meant as a way to show result? I think that is I would answer that the same way. That is the way that I would do it. I think that makes sense as an approach. It's probably not the only way to do this though, right? But yes, ultimately, that second part of that sentence, right, the summarized result, that really is what we're talking about when we say common ontology, right? That's the result. So the spirit of that question, the answer is yes. If there aren't any more questions, Darsh, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I wanted to go through the presentation, but it's already time up. So I'll share the presentation. So just to help you up with coming up with new ideas, etc. So we had a lot of schooling on how to get ideas. So yeah, I'll put that across in Discord.
And yeah, and we did get one really quickly here at the end. Yeah, I'll try to address that. Would you want the lower cost semantic search or fine-tuned approach, higher cost? So the cheat way for me to answer this is that I want the most accurate model that I can get. The truth of the model, the truth of the matter is, like, ultimately that cost does matter, but that in many ways is a problem for another day. I do see this as a solution that has a lower cost option and then some fine-tune layers on top of it. So I know a little bit I'm cheating with that answer, because I mostly avoided it by saying I want the highest level of accuracy possible. But I think that is the best way to look at it. If there are, if I'm just reading the answers there, if there are those considerations, that should be noted in the final submission, right? Like there's a spot in there for how do you add on to this model? How would you extend this model? What do you see as strengths and weaknesses of this model? So that narrative would in those cases go into that spot, I believe. But here's another way to think about it too, Adarsh, if I can for just a minute. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Because I think it's a good question, and this brings up a point that I addressed the last time, and I forgot to this time. So if you think about like language translation, right? Like if so I have some Spanish language skills, right? And if I was to build a translator between English and Spanish, there's 60,000 words in the English language, and probably a similar number in Spanish. There's also different versions of Spanish spoken in a lot of places. There is slang that's in both languages. And then you have this weird time series element to it, right? I can use a pronoun in this sentence that refers to a noun from 5 sentences ago, or refers to a noun that I haven't even said yet. So it makes for like a really complicated translation. But on the good side, we don't have to get it exactly right, right? Like if I just kind of get the Spanish basically right, and you're a fluent Spanish speaker, you'll understand. And the same thing will happen when you're speaking back to me in English. If you don't quite got it right, I'm still going to understand. We have a different scenario here because the vocabulary that we're talking about is much, much smaller, certainly under 10,000 words. And there isn't slang. There isn't different dialects based on a region. And there isn't this time series element, at least as we've envisioned it, right? There's no pronoun that I have to figure out what it refers to, and I got to figure out if it's last sentence or next sentence. None of that exists. But unlike the spoken language translation, we have to get this really close to right. I don't want there to be a significant attack that we miss because we mistranslated something. So so that's a long way around adding a little more context to the question about, do you care about the fine tuning or not? And ultimately the accuracy of this is really, really important. So hopefully that provides a little more flavor to that. One other sort of quick caveat I'll add that Jack mentioned in the intro video: we're not actually providing any cybersecurity at all. We are the old, if any of you are as old as me, the old BASF commercials. We don't make the products you buy, we make the products you buy better. That's what this is doing. Whatever Microsoft Defender had for analysis that bubbled this up as a security event, we're taking them at their word. Whatever CrowdStrike assigned for a severity to this event, we're taking them at their word. We're not providing any cybersecurity functionality at all. We're just providing the tools to make it easier for cybersecurity analysts to deal with the avalanche of data they have. So I hope that answered your question at least a little bit. And again, I'm happy to continue like the conversation on Discord, because I think we've had some really, really good questions from this session.
I think, yeah, you have kind of answered all of the question, and we don't see any open question in the panel as of yet. So I think we can wrap this up, or if you want to continue ahead with something.
Yeah, awesome. I don't have anything else on my side. I've pushed the Discord channel a million times, but I do think that'll be a good resource. So I would encourage people to get on there. And again, I'm super happy to continue that conversation there. You know, there'll be more folks than just me that will be available to participate in that there. And I think that, you know, sort of that community discussion, if you will, really help us arrive at the best solution.
Drop in the Discord link in the chat once again for people to, you know, refer to. And I think we only have one person right now. The rest, I think, had their questions answered. So thank you, Sean, for answering all the questions wonderfully. And thank you everyone for joining in. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.